I called it Stranger Things showrunners have taken retroactively editing episodes too far and fans should be furious. They admitted to doing small tweaks on previous episodes, but now fans suspect they're changing the plot in previous seasons.
And the pushback on this is I've seen some people say that the scene in question here didn't happen, the edit didn't happen.
Yeah, so the small
Never
tweak
happened.
that the Duffer Brothers did admit to in an interview with Variety last month was it was a continuity error with Will Byers' birthday.
Yeah.
So
May and March or something, right?
Yeah.
Wrong
So
month.
in season 2, his mom said that it was March 22nd. And then in the recent season, he was celebrating it in May.
Oh.
So they had to admit that they needed to go George Lucas that, which refers to going back and like changing CGI, coloring, continuity issues after something's already released. They admitted that they were going to do that, and that their plan was to just splice in like an audio recording of Winona Ryder saying May in the earlier episode because it fits with like the shape of her mouth as she's saying March.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I love bad ADR. It's one of my as somebody who's hard of hearing and has to look very closely at what people
rely
are
on
saying.
their- yeah.
I love bad. It's one of my favorite things in television. I love when it's the
What about
when
motion smoothing?
like an over the shoulder shot and like the person's talking, you can clearly see the side of their cheeks are not moving. I love that. I live for that stuff.
That's hilarious.
You shouldn't be fixing this stuff. It's part of what makes these mediums time like.
Well, it shows that because the fans are the ones who noticed it, they're more invested in the story than the Duffer Brothers are.
Yep.
Or
The Duffer Brothers have more to do in like things
Okay.
stuff slips through the cracks. It happens.
I get it, but also like you don't need to go and change it just because you can. And I think they're trying to become czars at Netflix just because they kind of have the bargaining chips right now. They saved them in a really bad quarter, and now they can kind of do unprecedented things there that Netflix otherwise wouldn't allow.
This stuff should never ever be done, in my opinion. You shouldn't. The beauty of this art form is that it's perfect in its imperfections, and a lot of people love that stuff. They love to go back and catch
It's like an Easter egg.
They don't want you to fix it. They want to catch the mistakes and point them out. I love that stuff. Like one of my favorite things is in the show The Shield. The way the show The Shield was filmed was so frenetic that a lot of times you'll see cuts and you'll see a camera guy like leave the shot and they leave it there, and that's fine. I don't want you to go back through and key out that camera guy. I want him left in the shot because it makes me smile.
Right. It's like a flaw in a
Does it
stamp.
add to the soul? Or
Exactly. It
character
makes
of
it much more interesting.
I don't.
I
want
mean,
them
I
to
think
fix
just
this
do
stuff.
it right the first time
That
is
could work,
ideal.
too.
Theoretically, that's what they should be doing.
And so they also admitted they made small changes to their recent season 4 during its opening week,
Wow.
which Netflix had never allowed to happen before. They said it was for visual effects, and they had to convince them that it would turn out okay. And they were allowed to do it. And I believe that's because they kind of have the power in this situation. They saved Netflix's ass. They lost, what, like
970,000 subscribers.
Not that.
I think it was 1.3 million from both Canada and the U.S.
I thought it was just under 1 million. I could be wrong about that. Unless we're talking about the first quarter and second quarter together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that was unfair that they used the bargaining power to do that to the streaming service. So they otherwise wouldn't have let them if it were like a smaller show. Now, what people are really scared about is that it's a theory. It's unproven. I'll say that. I believe it, though.
Yeah.
They're theorizing that they changed a very pivotal scene in the first season at some unknown time. Someone made a TikTok about it saying they changed the scene of Jonathan Byers to make him look like, quote, less of a perv.
Yes.
And
Interesting.
what happened in the scene, I don't know if you guys have seen season 1, but he is looking for his younger brother who had gone missing at that point in the season. And then he hears screaming. He goes to Steve Harrington's house, who has Nancy Wheeler. Thank
Oh my
you.
gosh. I caught me off guard.
Nancy Wheeler is there, and
Cancel.
Barb is there. Barb is about to go missing as well, but she's sitting on the diving board of Steve Harrington's pool. Nancy Wheeler goes into Steve Harrington's house, and she's undressing in a second-story window. So then Jonathan Byers starts taking photographs of her as she is undressing.
Oh, that is pervy.
As a teenage boy is wont to
That is
do.
pervy. I agree.
I'm kidding. It's a joke.
Yeah, he starts to question his decision. He like lowers his camera,
Right.
realizes it would be an invasion of privacy, but then people remember him raising the camera and taking the photos anyway, and then taking photos of Barb at the pool. But they're saying they edited it, so they replaced it with him only taking photos of Barb.
Which would be
Right.
a very easy edit to make.
Super
Yeah.
It's
easy,
better.
yeah.
It's better than like Disney when people notice the edits of like Falcon
It's,
and the
like,
Winter.
clumsy.
Well, no, Disney made these edits of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and then like whenever people would complain, and then they'd put it back to the old way. They'd be like, "We have no idea how that
What are you
happened,"
talking
as if they
about?
didn't
Yeah.
have to hire an editor.
I mean,
to
at
go
least
in and
the
make the
Duffer
change.
Brothers are being honest about the fact that they like have no qualms with going back and changing things,
I
but they
hate
haven't
this.
openly admitted to changing this scene. And the reason that they would have changed it if they did, I believe they did, is because they are trying to evade controversy later on. They don't want people to come after them years later for a problematic scene in their show.
Which is terrifying because your art should represent what you feel in the moment, not what you mean 20 years from now.
And
when
stand
social,
by it.
And
Stand by what you
your art.
did.
Have
Stand-
some backbone.
I was trying to think of an example where this would be funny to me. Like I was rewatching the original Mighty Ducks recently. And there's at first I thought maybe they do a scene where at the end when Charlie Conway he scores a penalty shot to win the game. Like what if Joshua Jackson ends up being like a creep and they have to they don't want Joshua Jackson's character to get the win and they change the whole concept of the
Then they
movie at the end.
deep fake.
And they edit out.
man.
But I think the better example would be there's a scene in this
Thank you,
movie.
guys.
There's a scene in this movie that I realized years later would be super, super terrifying as a kid. So basically what happens is the character of Adam Banks, he has to switch from playing one team to another. And then when the two teams play, when the Ducks play the Hawks at the end, the coach for the Hawks basically tells two of his kids to hurt him and get him out of the game. And I'm thinking back to imagine the trauma of all the years later finding out after your coach or your peewee hockey coach turned you into a hitman, right? So what if they were to remove that scene and it fundamentally makes that character less of a scumbag because the character is a scumbag, and it makes him less so, but because they don't want it to reflect poorly on what hockey does for the youth of the Midwest or something like that. It fundamentally changes that side character and makes him different. I don't want them ever doing that to something that is meaningful. The way that show or that movie is meaningful to me is the way Stranger Things will be meaningful to the youth of today.
I think it already is rather sentimental. If it's been out for 6 years already, people can't revisit the old seasons anymore and expect it to be the same thing they first watched.
You almost have
which
to
is
be on
really
guard.
disturbing.
Yeah,
You have to be
do.
on guard, and then you wonder every time you see a change, you're like, "Am I losing my mind,
Yeah.
or did they change something?"
And they're trying to gaslight us into thinking that no, it was always that way.
What did we? We didn't change. It sounds
didn't change
crazy.
You can
anything.
always compare it to your physical copy. And that's what I think the conclusion of this is that consumers need to get physical copies of stuff that
Yes.
they're
Buy-
attached to emotionally.
100%.
Buy physical media
100%.
if you can, if and when you can. I don't even know if the later seasons of Stranger Things are have physical
not
copies.
sure.
I know the first season did because they talked about it in the article.
Yeah.
I do not know if the later seasons have that. That should terrify. On top of just for a lot of it, it's not even necessarily so nefarious. Sometimes you're going to buy something, and then the licensing deal will run out with that company and it will no longer be on that platform anymore. There
Right.
are shows every day I go onto my Amazon Prime and then some show that I love is gone.
So annoying.
And it sits in my continue watching list. I'm like, I'll watch an episode of that tomorrow. Then the day I finally go back to watch it, it's no longer available.
Yep.
And I want to throw my remote away.
Yep. Can't procrastinate.
The problem I'm seeing with this is the precedent that is set, given that Stranger Things is Netflix's flagship. It's kind of a hit for them.
Yep.
And
Okay,
they get
yeah.
to be the tastemakers or the rule makers for next projects. So if like someone who produced The Gray Man wants to go back and change something in that movie,
Imagine trying
who
to
is
change
to say
something-
that they're not allowed?
And imagine trying to, like you said, trying to change something so boring and inoffensive. As much as I liked it, it was about as cookie cutter of a movie as you could get. Like maybe they go back and like one day, like they find out that the trash stash is now socially unacceptable. So they have to go through and Henry Cavill out his mustache like they did to Henry Cavill in Batman vs Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that, or they're like, or Jim Carrey gets in trouble, and Jim Carrey was very clearly. I'm just kidding, but he was to me he was Chris Evans' influence on this movie. But they could do that if an actor, like if maybe not with a lead actor, but if some side character in a show ends up being a creep, they can go through and just deep fake out that person.
I don't like that.
And since you've signed your contract, it's not like they can't put a new person in. Yeah,
Ezra Miller. There's your reasoning.
Well, maybe that's what they do with somebody pointed out that they don't even mention his character name. In that trailer for Shazam: Fury of the Gods, they call Aquaman Aquaman, they call Batman Batman, but they call the Flash the guy with the lightning bolt on his suit, and they didn't show his face.
That's so weird.
Yeah, so I don't know.
But he's not in that.
So, no, but in that trailer, Zachary Levi's character, Billy Batson's referencing him because they exist in the same universe.
Yeah, that's crazy that they can. You can even like desecrate a character you played by your personal decisions.
Yeah. Imagine that. Like me and Dane have argued before, where he says nobody likes the Flash. I say nay. You are wrong, my friend.
He said that about Ant-Man.
The Flash is a very, very well-loved character. So imagine now you're reading a Flash comic and all you can think about is how Ezra Miller's a creep and hiding women on his compound with guns available for people to pick up and bullets on the floor.
Another thing about this that bothered me is they're trying to make out Jonathan Byers as being like the same two-dimensional person throughout the whole series.
You can't do that.
You can show him doing something wrong.
Sure.
But
that was the first season. You're 4 seasons in. If you haven't developed the character by then, that's bad writing.
They don't believe in that, though. They believe that the character should be the same all the way through because they have to be as inoffensive as possible. Yeah. Characters are not written to have flaws anymore because that would be the flaws. They believe that any reference to anything is you tacitly agreeing with that thing. So by showing a character taking pictures when he shouldn't of a woman who doesn't know that she's having her photos taken, the weirdos on the internet believe that that's the director saying that that's okay when that's not what they're saying.
Right. Yeah, they could show his character evolving for him to be a better person. Then later give him another opportunity to do something similar, and he resists. There you go.
I could think of 1,000 examples of characters that I love that grow as even like a really simple example would be there's on the original NCIS, Michael Weatherly's character starts off as basically a creep and a womanizer and grows into like a full-fledged person and in many ways a heroic person in the real world in his job as an investigator for the Navy. But like the idea is that he started off very, very immature with tons of flaws and grew into a better person through character development.
That's a good character.
That's what resonates with people, and that's what they want to see. Yep. That's why people were maybe attached to Stranger Things so quickly because they showed a story like that's just human.
Yep. Well, they don't want to show anything that's human anymore. They want to show you the watered down version of the world that's safe for public consumption.
I don't like that.
It kind of goes back to we were talking the other day. Like the Hollywood did the best good for society when they were subliminal in their messaging. They did a lot of good for lot of good for society by not showing smoking anymore, or defining it as not good for you.
Right. That's a cultural change.
That's a cultural change that they played a part in. That's why I take issue with the heavy-handed approach that they use now.
I don't know. I think at this point, smoking on TV shows and films is like the least of our problems.
But the point is there was a time when they stopped actively using it very often, and good characters were not shown doing it.
Right.
It was something reserved for bad guys.
Then it became something that that helped you mark a bad person was someone who smokes.
If you watch the show Lucifer, at least in the first, from what I remember, the first 3 seasons, you never see him actually use the cigarette. It's always like in the ashtray, or it's him putting it out. He never actually uses it.
Interesting. I did not notice that.
I don't know if they did that with the later seasons,
Weird.
but they did that with the
enjoy
first
that show.
one, so.
There's I also wanted to point out there's going to be a continuity error if they did remove that scene anyway, because he answers for the photographs he took of her in the next episode. She confronts him about it and is like, what is this? So either way, whether or not you show him taking the photos or not, it is in the plot that he did.
Imagine taking the character from The Sandlot who fakes drowning so that he can kiss Wendy Peppercorn and changing it so that he's actually drowning.
Love The Sandlot, by the way.
Oh, you have evolved. You are truly a pop culture podcast host now. That is
good.
Imagine changing that and making it so that that's not true, so that he didn't fake it, so that he could kiss Wendy Peppercorn, his darling lover girl.
Yeah,
that would just ruin it. It would ruin it.
Yeah,
it's awful.
Yeah, because that would show someone lying, and lying is wrong, so we can't see that on TV. It's just weirdly moralistic for a society that is completely amoral, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's
also,
a good point.
A point about The Sandlot is James Earl Jones has looked the same age. He's been like James Earl Jones
those people
for like 40 years.
That's
He's kind
funny.
of just James Earl Jones. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.